I'm Jennie Price and I'm Chief Executive of Sport England. I've been giving a keynote speech about the relationship between Sport England and CSPs. Most of you are doing a fantastic job, that you're absolutely critical to the delivery of sport in a community, and that we want to strengthen the relationship as we go forward and keep working really hard and well with you.
Thank you very much, Lee. Good morning, everybody. I did quite a lot of thinking about what was the right thing to talk to you about this morning, and I'm conscious that I wasn't here last year, not here physically because this wasn't here, but at your conference last year. And rather than give you a kind of 20-minute lecture about our strategy, I thought it might be more useful for me to talk to you a bit about our partnership and our relationship. Because as Lee said, it's maturing, it's different to what it used to be, and so what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about how we work together, about the wider context that we're all operating in, and what I think is coming around the corner, because as Lee said, the stability for us all, is key. Having one sense of direction, one set of objectives, broadly speaking, we can live with the odd tweak. What we don't want is a reverse. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years, making sure we don't get that is a really strong shared priority. So that's what I'd like to talk to you about today. Just to start off with the current context and where you are and where our relationship is. Hopefully what we have been able to give you is a level of stability through the Sport England core funding. I know for every organisation, core funding is the tough thing to get. It's the thing that lots of other funders will struggle to give you. So we're very clear that the existence of the network is fundamental to us, and therefore continued core funding is what we need to do. And there is no question that we will reduce that amount of money. You'll know that our national partners in particular have had quite big reductions over the last 4 to 6 years. There is no question of us doing that for the CSP core funding. I'd love to be able to give you inflation increases, but nobody's giving us any, so we don't have any to pass on. The CSPs are absolutely fundamental to the delivery of the strategy. One of the things I talked to my team about in preparation for this is what messages do you need to hear? And I was quite surprised when somebody in the room said, well, you know, you really need to reassure them that your commitment, organisationally and personally, to the CSP network is unshakable and ongoing. And the best way, I think, for me to demonstrate that is that when we sat down to write the last strategy, the one that we published at the beginning of last year, there were 2 organisations that went on the team sheet. I'm sorry, football puns are just inevitable today, so just get that one out of the way. But there were 2 organisations that went on the team sheet. One was NGBs and the other was CSPs. And there was absolutely no question that core delivery rested on those 2 bodies. So we have a really strong commitment to you in terms of the delivery of our strategy, but as I said at the beginning, we need to work together to make sure that's all going to be successful. And you don't need me to tell you that the operating environment that we're in is a difficult one. But I think it probably is worth just saying that we are in quite an unusual position in sport. Everybody who's dependent on public sector money is finding life tough. And local authorities, perhaps, I think, as I look across the publicly funded environment, are in the toughest position of all, because many of them are in the 2nd or 3rd tranche of cuts and are making some very, very difficult choices. And we also know that lots of the other partners you work with, lots of charities, lots of non-profit making bodies, have also seen their income drop because people have less disposable income to give, and public sector subsidy for that type of activity has reduced really significantly. So your operating environment is getting it from both ends, as it were. You've got local government with fewer resources and less hard cash, and lots of your delivery partners are also under pressure. But having said that, everybody thinks that sport has been handed the most fantastic hand of cards, that it's had the Olympics, it's had the front and the back pages of the newspapers for a year, it's had fantastic medal success. So of course, sport is going to do brilliantly. And we're almost in a position where an uninspired youngster is a failure rather than a fact of life. And what you've seen up there in the videos today are some fantastically inspired youngsters and some kids who are just having a really good time in sport. But if you were a cynical journalist and your headline that you wanted to write was "No Legacy," of course you can go out to a housing estate, a bus stop, a school, and find a young person who was either inspired and has stopped or is completely uninspired. So we are in an atmosphere of massively high expectation. And I see it a lot in government. There is a real sense that, sport has been given this great boost and all these advantages, and so it absolutely has to deliver. Whilst other people might be in a tough funding environment, the feeling about sport is that it's had the most terrific advantages. One of the good things I think about the Olympic effect, though, is what it's done for disability sport, and I was really pleased to see that you had a disability example up there. And I think one of the things that I would like to make sure we talk enough about is how we do reflect the strategic priority we now have for disability sport into the core spec and the work that we do with you. Because one of the promises we've made to government is that although we will boost overall participation, the one priority group, as we used to call them, that we will work with really strongly is disabled people who might want to play sport. And I think that the Paralympics showcase fantastically what's happening in elite sport, but at the community level it is still much, much tougher for a person with a disability to find a club or a gym or a sports field which really welcomes them properly and gives them a great opportunity. So thinking about what you can do locally to help us with that is just something I'd really like to make sure that we've got on the agenda. So we've got a wide and tough operating environment, but we have got some clarity. The NGB whole sport plans this time are much clearer. We've spent a lot of time with the sports, requiring them to be clear about where they want to work, exactly what they want to deliver, and what programmes they want to land. So that should help when you're talking to them about local delivery. Our strategy is clear, and hopefully that's reflected both in the core services that we fund you for and the programme delivery, and you know broadly what's expected. It was really interesting last night. I was sitting next to Alex Horn at the dinner, and when I went up to him I said, "It's really nice you can be here, Alex." And he said, "Well, yes, it's great, and I'm here for two reasons really. One, because you're here in our home, but actually we can't deliver our strategy without these people, and I won't be able to deliver my whole sport plan without the support of the CSPs." Now, I know he said that when he was standing up here, but he wouldn't he? But he said it instantly and in a completely kind of natural and unthought through way, which tells me it's really what he thinks. Now, if the FA needs you with their delivery structure, and they've got one of the strongest, then every sport who wants to land a good plan in your area needs you too. So the role and the need is, in my view, absolutely undeniable. And hopefully what we're giving you is the kind of financial commitment, and I'm not going to recite the numbers because you probably know them better than I do, that will help you to deliver that. What I did just want to highlight, and these figures are for the financial year 13 to 14, that just under 25 million is equivalent to what we give the top 5 sports for a year as well. And the kind of targets that we set them, the delivery infrastructure we expect them to have, if I add up across the 5 sports, is not dissimilar to the kinds of things that we are asking of you. And this is annually, this is our second biggest funding commitment to any group of organisations. So I do just want to reassure you, it's not just that you are a high priority, we are doing our best to fund you at the level that allows you to deliver. And looking over the last couple of years, there are some really great strengths in what the CSP are doing for us. Your performance on programme delivery is very, very strong, and that's why we keep giving you programmes to deliver. And more importantly, it's why when the politicians say we need X or we need Y or we need to be confident that something is happening, then one of the answers we have, and often the first answer, is, well, this is something the CSPs can support. And what you've done with Sport Debate, and there was a DVD up there of that, is a really good example of an incredibly well-delivered programme. What I would like to do, and I think we need your help a bit with this, is to get that success story out there a bit more. I'm not sure the name helps us with stakeholders and decision makers. It kind of doesn't necessarily say exactly what it means. Politicians who, as you know, are great at launching things but often think that's kind of done. I'm not sure they've really got the impact that Sportivate has had locally and on the lives of those young people. So when you're doing your influencing locally, particularly with political stakeholders, the success of Sportivate is something that I think we can all benefit from selling a bit harder. You did a great job with the school games. The first year of the school games was a little bit like coming down a helter-skelter. You know, you kind of got on the top, but then you had to get to the bottom. No choice, and it was going to be really fast and a bit hairy. So the school games was really important. I think it is here to stay. This government does have a really strong commitment to competitive sport. And the way it culminated in the showcase of the big event in the Olympic Park, I think convinced a lot of people it was the right thing to do. So the role that you have in supporting the school games will continue to be an important one. And I was really pleased as well, not something we fund you for, but the fact you got the next round of the Community Games funding was a really good sign of a strong, healthy network that's delivering in a very reliable way. And I think one of the things that we all need to remember is there is no guarantee that things like school games, community games will continue post-2012. In fact, lots of people said it's going to be 1 year and that's it. Well, this is carrying on, and that's a real tribute to the way that you've delivered it and the case that you've made. Now, something that probably was a slightly less happier experience for you, and I know this felt like a straw on the camel's back very often, is the Sport Makers programme, where for a relatively small amount of money we asked you to do a pretty big job. But being able to deliver something on volunteering around the games was very, very important to us. And when I say us, I mean the whole of community sport and everybody who's engaged in participation. Because even before the games and the fantastic success of the games makers, as far as policy makers were concerned, volunteering was one of the big wins of the games. And then, of course, the games makers were amazing, and I know some of you in this room were involved in that. And it is something that's got an incredibly high profile, and we do have to make sure we hang on to. And what Sport Makers does is to try and take volunteering, as you know, into the 21st century. So it's not the kind of process where you have to give up your whole life and every Saturday and every Sunday to the club that it feels like you're running on your own. The whole point about Sport Makers is that it's about getting your friends or your team to do some sport on an informal basis with you. And the numbers are really impressive. I mean, getting nearly 70,000 people registered, getting 44,500 through the doors of the workshops is a fantastic achievement from practically a standing start. And the conversion of that into just over 21,500 people who do the 10 hours, and we know that it's more, we know lots of them don't register, and then having a retention rate of 71%, those are very, very good, strong figures. And I know it's been really hard work to produce them, but what you've done there is very valuable. Thinking about how we continue support for that kind of informal volunteering is going to be really an important job for us as we move beyond our kind of immediate 2012-2013 legacy programmes. I don't think you will see Sport Makers in its current form carry on in quite this way. What you will see is us supporting that informal version of volunteering. But I know that's been a hard struggle. I think those figures are really, really encouraging. So thinking a little bit about the future then, where are we in Sport England? Well, we've had a lot of Secretaries of State in my time at Sport England, but what we have managed to maintain is quite a high level of strategic stability. So we know, and you know, we're all about participation. And we're about people participating regularly, moderate intensity, for at least 30 minutes. We might have adjusted it slightly, the age ranges might have changed a number of times a week, but actually the core job has been the same for about 5 years now. And I see that being the same going forward, because however a government wants to use sport, the key is regular, frequent participation. So the guts of what we deliver I feel quite confident about as we go forward. And in terms of money, please all say regularly, thank God for the lottery. Because if we were dependent on exchequer funding going into this spending round, I would be really nervous, as frankly any agency or any department that has to depend on taxpayers' money is nervous. It's not looking very pretty because of what's happening to the general economy. But the lottery is going like a train, because in this time of recession, people are buying lots and lots of lottery tickets. And as you know, we are totally dependent on the number of tickets that are sold. Our profit, our share, depends on the profit that's made by Camelot. There are some risks lurking around. There is the health lottery, which is well backed and well advertised, and that doesn't go into sport in the same kind of repetitive, regular, reliable basis, although they have funded some one-off projects. We are really dependent on the recession not making people think, no, actually, I'm not going to buy a ticket this year or this week. And we're very dependent on Camelot doing a good job. And the fact that they're raising the prices, and yes, they're raising the prizes as well, is really quite worrying. Their projections show it'll work, but if it doesn't, then us and you and all of us who are dependent on lottery funding are the ones who are going to suffer. So there are some risks there, but broadly speaking, the reason we've got cash to spend is because of the lottery. I've talked about the huge expectations post-games. Somebody asked me about legacy last night, and it is becoming a bit of a noose around my neck, I think it's fair to say. But what we have to deliver here is we have to deliver growth in participation over the long term. The figures might dip a bit next time because we've had some absolutely lousy weather. But if over the next 2 or 3 years participation goes up steadily and there's no particular target, it just has to keep going up, then we, the whole system, Sport England in particular, will be in a decent place. I think where we also are is that the NGBs are aware now, perhaps more than ever before, that there is no excuse for non-delivery. That the money they have received from us that was awarded at the end of last year is not 4 years funding, it's years 4 to 8 of 8 years funding. And that really that has absolutely got to be made to work now, and that money will go and will be put into other parts of the delivery system if that's not successful. And finally, where we are strategically, we have to deliver across England. And that doesn't mean a return to carving up into regions, but it does mean that just delivering in the south isn't good enough, just delivering in the urban areas isn't good enough, just delivering where there are Franklin councils isn't good enough. We have to deliver across a sufficiently widespread of England, and of course that's where we are incredibly reliant on you. So, what do we need from you? The network and the individual CSPs have strengthened immeasurably in the 6 years that I've been at Sport England and the time that we've worked together. But we have to carry that on. In some ways, what happened to the school sports partnerships is a salutary lesson. One stroke of a minister's pen can get rid of all of us, even if there are some individual examples of excellence and even if we're really clear of our role in the landscape. But the better we are, the less likely that is to happen. Somebody once said to me when I was panicking about government policy in another job, you just have to be excellent. You can't control everything, but you just have to be excellent. And if you're excellent, the chances are you come through. We do need a positive response from you to the new performance management framework. Now, I know that when DCMS gives me a new performance management framework, there's an awful lot of sighing and sucking of teeth back at the branch, and I know it's always tough. But this one is there for a reason. It's there so when people say to me, can we put this initiative through the CSPs? Can we use the CSPs for this? And there's some big, important examples of that coming up. I can say with confidence, yes, we've got a really high-performing network, we've got a very good management framework to make sure that it carries on. We need you to keep managing really well, up, down and laterally. So the people who deliver for you, the people who fund you, us and others, and the people you need to influence to make the right decisions. And laterally, we're talking about you as a network. Because what I'm really clear about is that the network here is key. If you were a group of 49 bodies who simply came together once a year for this conference, we could not fund and support you as we do. The fact that you are a genuine network, the fact that you have the CSPN, that you have a board that speaks for you and to you and plays a leadership role, the fact that you are engaged in mutual improvement work like this is why we can keep funding you. I was thinking last night about why was it that 2012 was so successful? Because there were moments in the lead-up when even those of us on the inside thought, I'm really not sure this is necessarily going to work. And even in those first few days, if you remember, when we hadn't won any medals and there were empty seats in all the VIP areas, and it was all looking a little bit shaky, I was thinking, what was it really that made it fantastic? And I think its power came from critical mass of success. We won enough medals. There were enough transport triumphs. Enough of the venues were absolutely fantastic. You know, there was the odd one that wasn't perfect. There was the occasional performance that actually was not anything like as good as people expected. There was the odd moment when it took somebody 5 hours to get home. But the critical mass was brilliant. And I think that's a really good standard for us to set ourselves. If you as a network, and we with our partners and the projects we fund, can get that critical mass, then we will get to the right place. So what you can expect from us is quite a lot of challenge, because that's how things get better. But what I do promise you is a really high support environment. So lots of help and assistance and financial support from us. I do commit, and I really do commit this, to future security funding for the network. You are absolutely intrinsic to and embedded in the system. And I do promise that we will be open and straight with you. And we had a very good discussion with the CSPN board last night. I'm going to have another one with some chairs after this session. And the thing that helps me most is when you're really straight with us. And certainly, I can promise you, we will be honest back. But I think finally the thing I would ask is that when you're out there with your partners, that we are visibly and audibly mutually supportive of each other. It's really, really hard, really, really easy to get into the CSPs, Sport England, no, typical Sport England, of course they always do this. And it's really easy for people to try and get us to say that about CSPs, but actually, if we talk each other up, support each other, are positive about each other, we sit at the heart of the delivery system for community sport. We're the people actually, between us, who can make this work and make this incredibly successful. So we need to make that really obvious to the outside world, because there's lots of people out there who will chip away. It's really important that we're mutually supportive and strong, and I promise you that I will play my part in that. Thank you very much.